Welcome, everyone, again to our first session on healing for work. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about a few different things. This is our agenda. We're going to do some introductions with the folks in the room, introduce Heidi and I. We're going to tell you a little bit about the program, and then we're going to do an activity together that Heidi is going to be leading. And then we're going to talk more about the program and leave some time at the end for any questions and answers that come up for you while you're going into the room today into talking with us. So I also wanted to say that as we go through this program, we're going to leave time at the end for Q&A, but we're also going to be, if any questions occur to you while you're doing this work, you can put it in the chat as we're going through it. Put it in the chat and we can make sure we answer it at the Q&A at the end.
I'm an educator. I'm a former educator. I left the classroom in 2019 to kind of spread my expertise of social emotional learning and mindfulness, restorative and trauma-informed practices, and equity inclusion throughout a broader reach. My initial reach was within the education sector, really trying to support people in having the right tools to do life, to do those ups and downs that come with life, and to navigate relationships and emotions so that they can be their best selves within the community. And I felt like the school system was a great place to do that because I could reach students who were growing and learning. And then I could reach their families who may also need to, kind of do some backwards learning, like, roll back the clock and learn things that they didn't have access to when they were younger. So I felt like that was a really broad reach. Today, I'm also trained in appreciative inquiry, which is a positive strengths-based approach to looking at things versus looking at what's not working. We look at what is, and then how do we build upon that? And I'm co-authoring a book right now about bringing appreciative inquiry into schools. It's called A Trail of Conversations. And recently I started collaborating with Amy to bring this work not only to schools, which we are working on a program specific for education, but also to other sectors, because we see that there's a need for this, especially, after the 2020 pandemic. We're seeing it more broad than before.
Yeah, great. Thank you for introducing yourself, Heidi. I'm Amy J. Wilson. I go by she and they. And there's a lot of different things that I have done. I've been a full-time entrepreneur for 5 years now. I am the founder of Healing for Work. This has been something that's been a twinkle in my eye about 5 years ago. Some of the things that I worked on, I was the former director of innovation.gov and the Better Government movement. I think it was before its time. There's a lot of stories I could share from that. But one of the things when I was leaving was I was trying to create a support group for people and leaders of change within the federal government. And that didn't fly well in the administration that I was working with. And so I went outside of government at that point to kind of lead. And I also authored the book, Empathy for Change, How to Create a More Understanding World. So this is kind of squarely, this work is squarely in the wheelhouse. And I've also been seeing this work around mutual support networks that have helped me and others in my lifetime. I am in 2 different 12-step programs, and one in particular, adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families, has been very influential in my life, and it's a lot about behavior change. And I wanted to bring that into kind of like, how do we bring this kind of mentality into the workplace in a bigger way? And how do we really support each other and to change our behavior? So one thing to mention I'm really excited about, I'm a cohort coach for Stanford University and UNC Chapel Hill. And last year, I also got a certification on self-care leadership. Happy to tell you more about that later. But it's a little bit about me. So let's dive in. So I wanted to say I've been recovering from burnout since 2015. And I've been finding more and more people falling prey to this. And I've seen it's only gotten worse, especially with the pandemic. And along the way, I have a special folder in my Instagram of collecting stories, reading, and different explorations about this awareness of burnout that we're having for years now. And I found a few ideas. But here's one that I think really speaks to the moment that we're in right now, and like the lack of agency I think many of us have in changing different things in the world. So I'm just gonna play this little clip for us. Oops. Let me see. Go here.
Does anyone else feel like they've constantly been burnt out for the past 2 years? I just realized this today that it's not just me who's been feeling this way, but collectively a majority of people, especially at work, have been feeling so burnt out. And it's to the point where vacations aren't solving this, taking time off isn't solving it, nothing is really working. I have a theory as to the reason why. I'm sure it's probably a few things. Of course, we lived through unprecedented times, aka a pandemic, political unrest, major amounts of information that we're constantly taking in on a daily basis online, plus this whole like hybrid situation. It's exhausting. And I think because of quarantine and the pandemic, a lot of us got used to living a slower, more intentional life. As hard as it still was a reset time for a lot of us. And I feel like when the world opened back up, we didn't really take those learnings with us. Instead, we decided to operate back to what things were before and go 110%. I don't know about y'all, but I want to take the learnings that we learned from slowing down and apply them to right now. To operate at 110% anymore. I just want to like live and thrive. Anyway, does anyone else feel this way? Also, like, let's talk about solutions, what we can do, because I really am kind of like out of luck here. Like, what do y'all do to combat serious, like years worth of burnout?
Yeah, thank you. And like, I'd love for you all to share in the chat window, especially. I'm gonna give yourself like maybe 10, ourselves like 15 seconds or so to really think about what in that clip that I just showed you that you responded to the most and felt the most, you know, what sticks with you. So we're gonna do this thing called a chat waterfall. And so give yourself about 20 minutes, 20 seconds. And then we're all going to send it at the same time. So I'm going to pause for about 20 seconds. You think about it and then get yourself ready, put it in the chat, but do not press send yet. Amadia, I see that you have responded, but I'm sorry I didn't respond. I didn't tell you this explanation right now, but what I would really love for you to think about it, and then we're going to do a waterfall all at the same time. So I'm gonna put 20 seconds. Just think for a few minutes. I'm gonna be quiet. And write down in the chat window what came up for you while you were watching that, and what did you relate to? Okay, when you're getting it ready, and on the count of 5, when I count down to go, from 5, we're all going to press send. Okay, so number 1, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Send. Okay. What I'm seeing here, thank you for sending these ideas. Oh geez. Okay. So I'm seeing Maria. You say vacations, taking time off was not helping, taking a lot of information, pandemic, having kids, the pace of life, and how the pandemic affected this. Yeah, these are all really important things that like this idea of vacation, self-care is not going to fix this. And it's really interesting that we mentioned this because the work that we've been doing has only gotten, you know, we've had lots and lots of stories, lots and lots of things that have come out. This idea that of talking about the pace of life and how the pandemic affected this idea of like taking time off is not helping is something that has been a recurring theme as I've been going deeper into this. And just last week on the Ezra Klein show within the New York Times, they have this wonderful show. We'll send it to you. via email for you to listen to, the link to it, but it's called Boundaries, Burnout, and the Goopification of Self-Care. And there's this, and Pooja Lakshmin wrote this book, and she speaks to someone on the Ezra Klein show to talk through, what are we really trying to, what are we really trying to accomplish here? Self-care is really not cutting it. There's a lot of reasons why. It's, some people have heard of compassion fatigue, but we also have this other concept called empathic distress, or like the distress that we're feeling with each other because we're resonating with each other's nervous systems in different ways. And so there's a lot of science that goes into it, but also, society today is getting out of control. And there's a new normal, and we haven't been able to adjust that to that new normal. So there's some data here. I'll just mention a couple of them, but it's really striking to see the data of what's happening as we're emerging from the pandemic. This has all come out in the past year or two. 79% of US workers are emotionally detached and miserable at work. And roughly that same amount are reported at least one symptom of a mental health condition. So we're isolated, we're disconnected, and we're lonely. And then what we have we've concluded in this work, and how it intersects with my research, is that burnout really blocks compassion and empathy. And so when we're in a place of burnout, we're focused in front of us and not focused on the people around us. And that has really far wide implications for our society at large.
And I'd like to just kind of tag on to what you said about self-care. Like, self-care as we traditionally know, it's not working. And there's a deeper level of self-care, like in Pooja's book, right? It's not about taking vacations and bubble baths and massages. There's deeper work that's needed for us to be able to function within a system that's either not functioning or that's stressing us out or things like that. And so that's who would be good for this work. Anyone who's feeling like within their profession, they're really struggling to keep afloat within the system. They're struggling to keep their own care, their own well-being. Maybe it's because they're also caretakers, in a service position, and they have a lot of empathy for others, and they're getting that empathy fatigue. Or perhaps it's for someone who, like myself, I went through a really hard time as a school teacher. I was really frustrated in the system that I was in. I was in a couple of systems, and the first system I was in was an okay system, but it didn't have the vision that I had, and I wanted to really put my mark on things, and I wanted to have more progressive thinking happening. And so I was getting frustrated and felt stuck. So I went to another location that was more progressive, and then the leadership there was pretty much toxic. And so for me, what I found was, in both of those environments, my energy level dropped. My abilities, like I was an amazing teacher, and I still did a dang good job with my students, but I know I could have given, like I was giving 100%. I know I could have given 150% if I didn't have that drain going on. And I think because I was able to be at 100% was because I was using these tools. Had I not, I'd have been out. And eventually that's what got me to leave the profession, because I want to bring this work to others so that you can thrive at your job. Even if you're frustrated with the system or things that are going on around you. So that's who this is for. Do you have anything to add to that?
I think that was just like a perfect encapsulation. Great story attached to it as well. I relate to a lot of the things that you were sharing too about, I do it in a different medium, in a different place, but over and over again, I've seen people deal with the challenging workplace, and dealing with this idea that the burnout that we're experiencing, but also from a person who's working in the social sector, in the public sector who was trying to change things, but it's just like a monumental work that you need to do. That's what I've been doing for the past 15 years, leading and helping other people to do that. But the thing is, if you're not putting the oxygen mask on yourself, you're not going to be helpful for the people around you. So that's really why we wanted to create this.
And I mentioned both of my workplaces because, one was a well-functioning system. There was nothing wrong with it. It just didn't match who I was, right? And also I had 5 jobs at that time. I was living in Silicon Valley and I needed to have that many jobs to pay the bills, and that added extra stress. So there was a lot that was needed to keep me going. And so it's not that every workplace is dysfunctional. We want to make sure that that's very clear. It's not necessarily about that. Some are, and so some people are looking to recover from that, and some are just looking to deal with the stresses of work and life balance.
Mhm. So, and what trauma is defined as is a set of experiences and or impacts that break or betray our inherent need for safety, belonging, and dignity. And that's a quote from Stacey Haynes, and she's the author of The Politics of Trauma. She's a somatic practitioner, and that has led us to where we are today. But because we have all this little t and big T trauma to process, we often would go to a therapist, but therapists to whom we go to process trauma are unable to meet the demand. Um, an APA study said that 6 in 10 psychologists no longer have openings for new patients. There's an increase of patients and with anxiety disorders, with depression. And then it's the sheer cost of this kind of work makes it out of reach for many Americans and not accessible. So what we wanted to do was to create this idea of like, how can we bring in that shared community feel and be able to support each other because we have seen it work and it's been proven in other places. And there's bringing in all of this research that we're going to talk about a little bit later into something that is really meaningful, that is about changing behavior and not just talking about it, but doing something about it. Um,
So we wanted to give you an opportunity to, have a feel for the types of things that we're going to be working with. And so this is, I chose this tool because it's a very quick and short tool that you can use at any time, anywhere. And it's a loving kindness practice. And there are several different ways to do a practice like this. You can do these practices for other people in your life, such as a loved one who may be going through a hard time. You can do this for someone that you're having a difficult time with, to support releasing your kind of negativity or tension around that person, which allows you to then interact with that person in a more reasonable manner so that you're not feeding off that vibe of each other. And you can also do this for yourself. So we're going to do a practice for all 3. And I want you to start by finding a comfortable position in your chair. You don't have to sit stiff or anything like that, but just, get comfortable. And then I'm going to have you close your eyes and follow me. If it's not best for you to close your eyes, if that makes you uncomfortable, you can just soften your gaze by looking towards your lap, and that will block your surroundings so there's no distractions. All right, I want you to think of someone who you would like to send some love and kindness to. Someone who you care about, someone who means a lot to you, someone who brings you joy. And place your hand over your heart as you picture this person in your mind. And you're going to repeat after me, saying these phrases to this person. I wish you well.
I wish you well.
I wish you joy.
I wish you joy.
I wish you peace.
I wish you peace.
I wish you happiness.
I wish you happiness.
I wish you love.
I wish you love.
And open your eyes. Okay, so we could now go into the same process for, someone who we've had a falling out with or a difficult conversation with, but I'm going to skip that for today because that's a hard one to do. And I'm actually going to go to the next one, which is for ourselves. This is where we bring loving kindness to ourselves. And Dr. Kristen Neff, who is a compassion expert, researcher, she says that we cannot bring empathy or compassion to others until we do it for ourselves, like fully. And so this is an exercise that is key to really supporting your own well-being, but also to benefit others so that you have all of yourself to give. And I'm going to have you do the same thing where you sit in a comfortable spot and either close your eyes or soften your gaze and place your hand on your heart. But before we begin the loving kindness, I want you to think about or notice what's happening in your body. Do you have any tensions anywhere? Are you relaxed in any spots? Are you feeling warm or cool? What's happening in your body? And once you notice some of those things, see if you can find an emotion that's attached to that feeling in your body. Is there something driving that tension? What emotion is driving the softness or the warmth or the cool? And just accepting where we are right now. Your emotions are information. There's no good or bad. All are welcome. And just settling in with that emotion. Now, as we begin our loving kindness, I want you to this time picture yourself in your mind as if you're looking into a mirror right now, today, with the same clothes that you're wearing in this moment. And repeat after me. I wish me well. I wish me peace.
I wish me peace.
I wish me love.
I wish me love.
I wish me joy.
I wish me joy.
And I accept myself just as I am.
And I accept myself just as I am.
And take a deep breath. And when you're ready, open your eyes. So yeah, this activity is one that you can do anywhere at any time. I mean, obviously, if you have people coming up to you, that's going to be challenging. But if you went to the restroom or you took a walk, quick coffee break, those kinds of things. And it doesn't take long. And it's a great way to rejuvenate yourself throughout the day. And I found when I do these for other people, I get a lot of energy out of that because it brings me joy to give to people. I'm very passionate about other human beings. I love everybody, whether I know you or not, kind of thing. Sometimes to a fault, but so that brings me a lot of joy to start with somebody that I really care about. But then when it comes time to do the activity for myself, because I used to do this with my kids when they were little, this was a bedtime routine that we did, and I'd ask them who they wanted to send it to, and then we'd do it for them, and then they're like, let's do it for mommy, and I'd be like, it was really hard to take the positivity towards me, not just to myself, but from them as well, and to really own it. That was more challenging than doing it with somebody who was difficult for me. So that's why I asked if one was easier than the other. But it is something you can do. Like Kristen Neff has people do this throughout the day over and over on repeat. And if you have thoughts starting to come in, like if you have self-doubt or any kind of negativity come in, just let that thought pass through, put it on a helium balloon and watch it drift away, and then come back to those phrases again and just repeat over and over for like 10 minutes. And that can really be uplifting if you need that in the middle of your day. I've also used this, like I said, I had a administrator who was bullying me for a couple of years. I would do a loving kindness for her before I went into conversations, before I went into meetings with her. And that helped me to be present during those meetings. It helped me not to have this tension on my face and my shoulders high, because like you said, Madiha, it really helps you kind of take that emotion and pass through it. So yeah, we wanted to make sure that you walked away with some of these tips. And yeah, we can send you the phrases. You can also research loving kindness online, and there are all sorts of different phrases. Kristen Neff has her very own, and I can send you the activity that she has. And the ones that I use today are ones that I did through my mindfulness training, and I feel most comfortable with. They roll off my tongue, so I use them most often. All right, so in our course, we have a 3R framework that we're going to be working on. Regulation is the first module, which lasts approximately 3 months. And it's going to be things like identifying our emotions and learning tools, just like we did today, on how to regulate ourselves so that we can be present and productive. The second module, which will be the next 3 months, so month 3 to 6, will be more about relationships and how we interact with one another, both at work and at home. This includes things like setting boundaries so that we're not overstepping ourselves and building resentment, things like that. It's not about changing people, it's how we interact with people and our own perceptions. Also building empathy for them, because in module 1, we built empathy for ourselves. And then module 3 is all about resilience and how to take the work that we've done in modules 1 and 2 and build upon that so that we can continue to thrive when difficult situations come up.
Yeah, and along those same lines, those are the 3 modules we have. This last piece, like the last group of 3, is how do we make sure we're keeping to integrate this work that we've been doing over time. And we are really intentional about centering this on the individual and a community experience. So we wanted to focus on the outcomes that we want to have for you. So our goals over this time we have are threefold. We want to help you build awareness of emotions such as shame, anxiety, and fear about the future or of your own success. Accept these emotions and learn to manage them effectively without being overwhelmed by them. And then we also want to help you identify and change some behaviors that might be self-destructive or unhealthy for you, and learn new behaviors on top of that. So we do this through what we call the healing loop, where it's a 3-part loop, where number 1, we're seeing and sharing the world, how we perceive the world, but also having self-awareness, which the how we perceive the world is what we call the window, and practice self-awareness is the mirror. What are we looking towards ourselves? We're going to, over these sessions, you're going to be seen, heard, and witnessed. And we're going to share those messy, complicated stories we have in our heads. And it's going to help us lean into more compassion for ourselves and even for others. Step 2 is where you go out and engage, and you're showing up and engaging relationally with different people. You're listening, you're building relationships in your own life, and then you're coming back together and re-engaging in your cohorts as you go forward. And then step 3 is what we call act. So that's how you influence and go towards action, where you're saying, okay, I see and I've shared this work. I've been engaging with my life and see how it shows up in my life. And now I want to say, what is the behaviors and how do I want to change myself? And you get to do this in community with other people. And throughout this coaching circle, you'll learn new skills and practices, reflect on what is and what you want your world to be, and also put a plan into action with accountability. So this is a month breakdown where over a commitment of about 2 hours per week, you'll get the following. So I wanted to say you'll get one-on-one support phone calls with your guide at the beginning and midpoint and end. So you'll have one-on-one coaching. You'll have group sessions with everybody on the first and third weeks of every month. And on the second and fourth weeks of the month, you're going to be engaging with your cohort. So this is a smaller group of people where you're going to be having a check-in, you're going to have some more reflection, some more integration and action planning. And we're going to intersperse throughout the experience reflection activities, some readings, perhaps a podcast, like the one I was telling you about before. And we're going to match you up with an accountability partner to have that experience with somebody who's going through the same thing along this experience with you. So you get to build that relationship over time. And so week 1 is introducing the topic. Week 3 is integration and action planning, kind of taking that whole healing loop into one, both in a bigger group setting, but also in a cohort setting. And Heidi, I think you're going to be talking about the modules at Advance to tell us more.
Yeah, so we talked about these modules going over the course of 3 months. So each month will have one focus. So the first month is self-awareness, and the second month is emotional self-regulation, and then the identity and the window that Amy was mentioning, that window looking out into the world, into your relationships and all that. So you can see how it's broken down here. With regulation, the kind of topics that we're going to be looking at. And then under relationships, you can see the topics that each month. So when you're going through that first week, as Amy had said, that's introduction of the topic. This is the topic she's referring to. And then all the work for that month will be focused on that particular topic. So it's a deep dive into each one of these. And then, of course, the last module being resilience, looking at self-reflection, competence and commitment, and how to reach out. But our fourth module, and we added this one because we felt like we should take this into a full year cycle and give you an opportunity to go out and try these things and still have some support. So the fourth module, instead of meeting weekly, will be once a month, and it'll be a check-in where we get to talk to each other about how's it going? What tools have we used? What are we seeing that's different? How have we changed? How has our life changed? How has the world around us changed? Because when you change one thing, everything else is different, right? So this is just an opportunity, that fourth module, for us to really look back and still have some support along the way. Mm-hmm. And our research is informed by many different things that are evidence-based. And one of them comes out of the education system, which is called SEL, social emotional learning. And here we have the castle wheel. And for those of you who are in education, you may have seen this already. But it has 5 components of self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. So there's a lot that comes out of that, as well as dialectical behavior therapy, where we look at our perceptions and how we're thinking, and how that matches up to the reality of what's happening out in the world. Of course, appreciative inquiry is a positive psychology approach, looking at the positive versus the negative, because we have more energy when we look at the positive. And when we just focus on the problem, then the problem grows. So why not grow the solution by looking at the positive and what we want? And then emotional intelligence, of course, which is about understanding our emotions and the emotions of other people and how to interact with those emotions. As I said before, all emotions are good and all emotions are important. And then 12-step programs as well, as Amy mentioned before. I also have a background in 12-step because I love people so much. I'm a good codependent. So I go to 12-step programs for codependency. And again, a lot of that is about interacting with relationships and how do I hold my own boundaries. That's the biggest thing I learned there is how to hold my own boundaries with love and kindness and without just on somebody. All right, next slide.
Yeah. And what I think, Heidi, what's interesting on top of that is that, like, not only are we people who've been studying this and teach this, but it's something that we deeply practice in our lives, and we're not perfect humans, and so we can bring in our own personal experience, but then hold the space for other people's experience, because all of our experiences are valid, and this is a place where we can share and be with each other. So on top of what Heidi just mentioned, we're also borrowing from a number of frameworks that are here. On the left-hand side is the US Surgeon General's Framework for Mental Health and Well-being. That came out in October of last year. So it's really informed by all of that, and we will go deep in some pieces of this piece, this framework. And then on the right-hand side is my empathy in action framework in how do you kind of take this as an individual to understand how do you actually inform the work that you do, focused on principles, what are the policies, what are the boundaries that we want to set, the practices and processes that we do in our lives, but also that can also be extrapolated into a system in a bigger way, as well, to redesign a system with more with a greater sense of empathy and compassion as well. So we have a couple, as we go into like the pricing of this work, we are starting off with 3 different products to begin with. So first off, we have a basic plan, which is a monthly support meeting that we're going to be holding. So for just $25 a month, you can kind of start being in support with each other. But if you can't invest deeper, you can get some support in that month that you're having it. And you'll also have access to a WhatsApp group, to a bigger WhatsApp group, to engage with each other, to give support as we go forward. And the coaching circle, which is kind of the experience that we've been talking about largely today, will have an investment of about $497 per month. And it will also have, if you sign up by October 15th, we're going to give folks who are joining these previews a discount of $297 a month. And that's going to be those weekly meetings. That's going to be your accountability partner. That's going to be your coaching circles, in group circles, but also one-on-one coaching. And then we're also having an organizational piece where we're having, if you want to bring this to a group of employees to heal together, or if you want to have multiple people join a circle, and we have either a specific circle or a circle for folks who want to join from one organization, we're happy to do that. And these are all things that we're working on our roadmap. We also have specific things we're planning on launching for teachers, healthcare professionals, and HR professionals, because some of the data is showing that they really need some help.
Yeah, and I'd love to mention that, the organizational piece, if where you work has a wellness program, this might be something they want to bring in, and they can send like a group of 5 to 10 people to our session that's going to be starting in November. Or if they want a larger group, we can design a session with dates specific for that organization. So if everybody in that group would be in that organization. So like a whole school district might do it, or like the county office of education might do it, things like that. So anyhow, we also have available discounts. We have 10% for people who've worked with us in the past and are giving testimonials. If somebody would like to do a deeper preview with us, we have a deep dive on the content, and we're looking for feedback so that we're building this with you. We give 15% off for that. And if anybody wants to help us send out social media posts and just kind of spread the word, then we're happy to give a 25% off that. And if they did all three, that would be 50% off. Also, if you are an individual who's choosing to pay for this yourself and you want the circle option, but you don't sign up before October 15th with the discount, or you don't have the pocketbook to do that. I know, especially with education, that can be a challenge. We're happy to work with you. So just, contact us via our email and we'll see what we can do for you. And then these are our cohort dates. Our first session will be on November 1st, and it'll be a 60-minute session. All other sessions will be 90 minutes. And that's just an introduction. And then we'll start the very first module in November, on November 8th, and it will always be on a Wednesday. We do have a couple breaks in there, such as right after the New Year. You'll see a break around Memorial Day, around 4th of July, and then August, September, October are once a month sessions where we're doing the follow-up. So something to think about is just how you can be gentle to yourself when you're having a difficult day, right? Either your day is just too jam-packed full, or you're having some challenging situations with others. What can you do? And some little hints are: find your happy place. That's one of the reasons we asked in the very beginning, what brings you joy, right? Like, focus on that gratitude. Do something you love. Like for me, I always love a warm cup of tea. So when I used to have staff meetings at school, we had these days where our principal would pay for the whole team to be off in a room by themselves for planning. And I would bring tea for everyone. I would bring a fuzzy blanket and some chocolate, right? Like, because these are things that was like, ooh, these bring me joy, and I can't do this while I'm teaching. I'll be going to the bathroom all day long, can't wrap up in a blanket around all day long, and I can't eat my chocolate. So those help. And then also getting out in nature can be very grounding. And when I lived in Silicon Valley, I was born and raised there in the Santa Cruz Mountains under the redwoods. There's so much nature right there. But when I lived in Saratoga, it was the concrete jungle. But my backyard had plenty to keep me going. So sometimes I would just go lay on the grass and look up at my pistache trees and, watch the butterflies flitter around and things like that. That's going to really help. So these are more simplistic self-care. They're not the deep dive, but they do help in addition to the deep dive. So just think about how you can be gentle with yourself when you're having a hard time.
Perfect. Well, thank you for spending our time together. And thank you, Heidi, for leading us through the activities today. I think they've been super impactful. We already heard some great feedback on here. Like I put in the chat, here's also a visual around how to get in touch with us if you have questions or you need anything. In the meantime, we'll be following up with details about all of this. We'll send the pieces of some of the recording to you, and then we'll be in touch in the next coming weeks as this fully launches out into the world. So if you want to make sure you stay in touch and in contact with us. We already have your email address, so we'll put you on the list of people to stay informed about what it is that we're doing. And in the coming weeks, as we launch and start taking in people to sign up, we'll certainly let you know. So thank you for your time today.